Hello, televiewers. Good evening and welcome to today's edition of Prime on My Media Prime. Today we are going to be revisiting what happened in Chad 2 days ago with the fall of Idriss Deby. Itno. We are going to be looking at what implications his departure is going to bring to the CEMAC sub-region and Africa as a whole. Is a departure going to cause a possibility for further instability, especially coming from the north of Africa? We discussed this with our panelists in the house today. We also are going to be looking at the increased death rate amongst our high-profile personalities. We are talking about MPs, Secretary of States, and Minister Delegates. We are going to be looking at whether it is imperative for the President of the Republic to engage in a cabinet reshufflement, and even if that has to be done, what are those age group to be prioritized given the stakes in which we find ourselves. We're talking about the health stakes. Also to note that yesterday most of our government ministers, beginning with the Prime Minister, yesterday out there in Yaoundé, the nation's capital, received their first dose of the vaccine, anti-COVID vaccine, to show the example to Cameroonians that it is but normal and good in the interest of everybody to take the vaccine. We are going to be discussing with our panelist, Paul Solambe Valentine Ngwa. He's our consultant with the house out here. We're glad to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Leo. Good evening, Cameroonians. And my co-panelists. It's always a joy, another hour to discuss very hard-burning issues. Africa is mourning the death of Field Marshal Idriss Deby. And I think God will help us to actually dissect the circumstances surrounding his death.
Also with us is Dr. Michael Dimancho, who is a member of the civil society. Good evening and welcome.
Thanks so much, Leo. It's a pleasure once more to be here, and I would like to say good evening to all the Cameroonians. I want to emphasize on this, to all the Cameroonians, be they Anglophones or Francophones. And special greetings to Apostle Ambe, of course, and happy birthday to him once more. Yes, thanks so much.
Okay, also with us is Andrew Atemi Bako. He is a Pan-Africanist. I'm sure so touched by what is happening in Chad.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leonard, for this opportunity again, and I want to send special greetings to the panelists who are in the house tonight and to all Cameroonians, both at home and abroad, who are watching this program. Thank you very much.
We use this opportunity also to say happy belated birthday to you, Apostle Lambi Valentine Ngwa. I know your children, spiritual children, spoiled you yesterday. I was expecting that you bring the remnants of your enjoyment of yesterday so that we can share out here in the studio. We hope that are they in the car? The remnants?
Yes, the remnants in the car. I also want the opportunity to appreciate all those who wish me happy birthday through social media and other means, and prayers from me. Thank you very much.
Okay, to also note that the fallen president of Chad, Field Marshal Idriss Deby, Itno, is going to be the funeral ceremony is going to be holding tomorrow out there in Jamena. Also to indicate that some African heads of state are already in Jamena ahead of the funeral, official funeral that is supposed to take place tomorrow. I'll start with you, Paul Solambe Valentine Ngwa. To say that Africa was not prepared for this departure at this time, especially given the very worrying times.
Yes, Africa was not prepared, because when I heard that Idriss Deby had died, I was taken aback, because the least person I expected to have been killed by now, it should be Idriss Deby. Secondly, the person who died and the circumstances surrounding his death still remains a mystery. Because if I was told that some civilian president had died at the war front, I would have considered it. Not when a field marshal, a man who has a record, he has a testimony of conquering different battles and wars in the continent of Africa. A person that Africans were looking up to, that if we were to unite as a nation, he was supposed to be the best person to control the military as far as all African presidents are concerned, because he's been the person that has proven beyond reasonable doubt that he has a mastery over the art of war, especially desert warfare. And for us to gather one morning and then suddenly we are told that Idriss Deby had died, not of COVID-19, not of cancer, not of diabetes, not of heart failure, but that he was defeated in the same thing we consider him to have been the best in, was actually a mystery and a total surprise to every one of us. And to me, the best of my understanding, and I've studied African history in a diverse and very wide range, these people don't die anyhow. There must be some clique somewhere that manipulated his sudden departure. I have had testimonies of so many Africans and presidents who built the strongest security, but it was people within their inner cycle that contributed to their demise. A clear case is that of Joseph Kabila. It was his, Laurent Kabila, it was his own son within the cycle. I gave an analysis here the last time concerning how it's only close members of the President Africa that are being used by people of the West to kill their own people. And I can guarantee that Idriss Deby couldn't have been killed by the rebels at the war front. It was too strange. I want to be convinced that it is somebody with it, because if you look at the, I don't know if the picture we saw on Facebook is actually the picture, a bullet at a very long range cannot penetrate somebody in that capacity, because the hole was too big behind on his back. So we are beginning to, as the days are unfolding, we are beginning to understand that this thing could be a ploy within his own inner cycle.
Okay, was shot from behind?
From behind, yes, from behind, and it's a very close range, and the hole was really large. That tells you that somebody very close to him did the job. And this is not strange to me. In the day you go to Richard Tolbert in Liberia, it was an inner person that killed him. Americans used a close person to kill him, and it's common and rampant. My fear is these things that happened in the past, are there still people in Africa who are still stupid to this extent, to be used by individuals from outside the country to kill their own people? Because Idriss was not just useful to the nation of Chad. We don't speak well about him because he's dead. It is good. He has his own bad side, that is true. But it's important for us to make sure that we give analysis on a balanced note to make people understand how useful that man was within the CEMAC region as well as the G5 Sahel area. Because he, among the G5 Sahel area, I think it's him and the president of Mauritania that happen to be military, for the rest are civilians. Mali has civil, Burkina Faso has civil, and Niger have the civilian. It is Chad and Mauritania that have, Mauritania has a colonel, him is a field marshal, who were the people who actually had a mastery, because there is total insecurity. There are three different insecure rebel groups within the Sahel region. There is a Greater Islamic for Sahel, there is Am Rasul, and then there is Al Murabitum. These are the groups that operate in that region that cause serious terrorism in that area. And Idriss, Boko Haram also. But Idriss Deby has played a very pivotal role in cracking down those forces. There was a time people were killed between the border of Burkina Faso and Mali. It was Chad forces that went there to quell down the crisis. So I am seeing his departure to lead that place. If it was porous, it's going to be more porous this time around.
Dr. Michael Dimacho, you see in this that a foreign hand, like he's suggesting, Apostle Abi?
Yes, I do see it, Leo, and I would like to say that President Idriss Deby died out of what I call Ahithophelism. Now, for those who are used to the Bible, remember Ahithophel, who turned against David in the Bible. And if not, David cried up to the Lord to protect him, he will have gone the same way. So we have most of these people like this in Africa. Now, this gives us the reason to say that Africans are still this very gullible. Yes. You know, I mean, and we are asking ourselves whether in this kind of, in the 21st century, we are still this kind of people who depend, who beg, and who are being manipulated upon. Now, you know, France is playing now an image of a godfather to Chad, but I'll let you know that I will not be surprised if they have a hand in it. you realize that this group, this militant group, is a group that is harbored in Libya. And this group is being actually supported by Khalifa Haftar. Khalifa Haftar is a dissident group in Libya. You know, after the fall of Gaddafi, we had two groups now in Libya. We have the government National Accord, and then we have the Bengadis militant group that is being headed by Haftar. And this group, the fact, is being sponsored in one way or other by Haftar. And you know that in Libya, curiously, France is in support. France is in support of Haftar Khalifa, which is, of course, a militant group that is fighting against the national government, the government national accord that was instituted by the UN or in 2015. And it's somewhat surprising, you know, that it is this very group that by Haftar that has sponsored the fact that has entered into Chad and has committed this act, this gruesome act that we have seen happening, that has happened in Chad. So we as in 2008, we were witnesses to what happened in Chad, whereby this very militant group fought right to the presidential gate, if not of France at that particular moment. Probably they had not finished their business with Deby. It was France that saved Deby in 2008 because this group came right to the presidential gate and Deby was almost going. But it was saved by this very France. And our reading is that at that particular time, he still had some issues to settle out with France. And France had to protect him at that time. So we are seeing an invisible hand in the death of Deby. Because how do you understand a man of this nature? I mean, of course, he is meant to fight war. I mean, it's not like other head of state who call themselves army chiefs and whatsoever, who cannot go to war. I mean, this is somebody who felt that for him to defend his title, you remember this title of Field Marshal, he defended it not long ago because he went to war and actually his exploit, I mean, was enormous, and that is why he came back with this title. And therefore, we see somebody who has the people of heart at this particular moment when he's supposed to be jubilating his success. I mean, at the elections, he decides to go, I mean, and savage the people from this insurgent group. We are with him, and we are saying that Idriss Deby has died at the time he wasn't supposed to. But my own reading is that sometimes, you know, the way you come is the very way you will go. Because this is the way he came. With Hissène Habré, this is the way he came. After Hissène Habré, he was like the godson of Hissène Habré. Hissène Habré did everything for him. He started abroad because of Hissène Habré, but he came back and actually launched a military coup against Habré and took over power. And to me, Idriss Deby's reign finished in 2005. That's when his reign finished. And if he wanted to go out nobly as a president, he would have gone out in 2005. Remember that it's in 2005 that he slashed up the presidential mandate. He was, I mean, he rendered, I mean, he was now limitless, and that he could go on and on and on forever. Even though in 2016, he said he did that in 2005 because he wanted to correct something that was going in Chad. He wanted to install after peace and democracy in Chad. But of course, that was just, there's a difference in politics between what you say and what you do. He only said that. So to me, 2005 was his last mandate before he crept up the presidential term. And I think that it is a lesson for other African presidents to say that when it is your time to go, you should go. And I know that if you went at that particular time, if you went at that particular time, you will be noble. You know that most of these militant groups, they were dissident. They left the army in 2005, and that's when Idriss Deby decided to go in for the third term. That's in 2006. This is when most of these soldiers left the army and decided to join the militant group. And it has been up to today because of the decision in 2005. So I think this is a lesson for all of us. It's a lesson for African presidents, and it's a lesson for the world. And I still cry and cry and say, Africa, we are grown of age, and this is not the time that we have to mingle ourselves into this. We thought Libya was the last. We actually thought Libya was the last, and we have seen this is almost a replay of what has happened, because we are blaming the NATO, we are blaming France, we are blaming America in the Libya issue. But now we have seen that it is actually we who are acting in a place of all these foreign powers, and I think that this should stop.
Why is it why are Africans so quick in pointing accusing fingers at foreign powers? we did not see the French military amongst the inner circle of the Chadian president.
Mr. Leonard, we have seen direct rule and indirect rule. We are not strange about what is happening in Africa. And there are many mistakes that a lot of political analysts are making, where they want to assume that the enemy of the West should also be our enemy. You see, when you talk about an individual like my special condolences to his family and his beloved nation and the people who love him so much. But when you look at the nature in which the African society is, it's a very disorganized society, where you don't expect to have, how will I put it, solidarity. We don't have solidarity because we are not organized. And the Africa has always been such a continent whereby it has always been influenced in so many ways and in different times and occasions. If you ask what was the significance of Idriss Deby Itno in Chad, one of the main reasons why he lasted for long was because he was one of the major persons who fought terrorism in that area. So at the end of the day, the question here is, who are they fighting and who is making the analysis that these people are terrorists? Because when you look at the definition of who a terrorist is, you can cite so many examples of seeing what the West has been to Africa, what the West is doing to Africa. The acts are all the same. So what I'm saying here is that until Mr. Leo, that the African head of states, if you look at the way he entered into power, that is not how, it's not a good example to any African state, how a president enters into power through a coup. Enters into power, instead of you now building a nation and creating a legacy that can live after you. It has not been the case. You have only been having, how will I put it, you are used in the hands of the West like a tool to fight the enemies of the West. Mr. Leo, when we talk about terrorists today in Africa, that he was a field marshal, who is he fighting in Africa, or the terrorists is fighting in Africa? Those are Africans. So who are these men who have analyzed, making this analysis that these are terrorists? Because Africans, the main problem with Africans is that they believe everything that comes from the West. Whatever the West says, they believe. But no one takes time, sits down to analyze. These individuals, like I remember vividly when terrorists began entering Africa. Before the September 11, 2001 of the World Trade Center, we did not have terrorists in Africa. We never had terrorists in Africa. We only started having terrorists in Africa was after the 9/11 2001 bombing of the World Trade Center. That was in 2002. We had the rise up of the AU. So we understand why the West is fighting, using these key leaders to fight terrorists terrorism in Africa, is because they have very huge interest and they understand that these terrorists are against the Western system of invasion in Africa. And now we have, I'll give you a very good example. Why is it now that these elites or these presidents have now become targets to this terrorist organization? It's just like the same example of the Northwest and the Southwest. The funds, the chiefs, the elites who supported the government automatically became enemies to the people on ground who are resisting. So this is the same way we are having today in all these African head of states. We are fighting the battles of another people, and we are fighting the wrong battle. The real people we should be fighting out of Africa are not these terrorists. They are the Western nations, the France, the Americans, whoever you call them coming from the West. These are the actual terrorists that we have in Africa. The rise of all these terrorist organizations we have in Africa are only being created because of the Western invasion of civilization that is coming here, globalization and all of that, because it's a whole threat to Islam, it's a whole threat to people's culture and identity and tradition. And that is why we will never ever stop having terrorists in Africa as long as Africa continues to sideline and begin to, how will I put it, becoming the product of the West. Why do we, I'll give you a very good example, Mr. Liu. How can you tell me that Chad has independence when it is unable to build its own system where it can depend on those systems?
Chad depends on France. How can you say you are independent and then you are depending on another person's system? It just tells you that this person is not independent. So let us be clear with what is happening here on ground. The passing away of, how will I put it, Idriss Deby Itno, there are so many complications there. The videos we even saw on Facebook, on WhatsApp, we are not sure that that was his body. We cannot testify that was his body, and we cannot really tell what really took place and who really killed him, or whether it was the West or. But like I've said, Mr. Liu, when you continue to use a system for how many years, ever since 1990 he entered into power, Chad is known as one of the most corrupted countries in the world and one of the most poorest country in the world, but yet it has everything. So it simply means that the definition of riches is not in what you have, but it's in what you are able to do with what you have. This country has not been able to use what it has to promote and improve the lives standard of its people. So you cannot compare Idriss Deby with Magufuli. It's like night and day. He can be applauded in the sense that he was a field marshal, but who is he fighting? We saw in Nigeria where Buhari was calling in France to bring in troops to come and fight, help fighting the Boko Haram. You also have in this same Chad, it was the same Chad before their election, is it Central Africa? We also saw troops coming in from France.
Russia
Also was coming to defend the former president, while France was also there to make sure that the incumbent president that was there, make sure that the election goes through. So what am I simply trying to say? We are opening doors for Africans to kill Africans because some white men, some super-called world powers have sat up there and making analysis without consulting the Africans and giving people names as terrorists. These are not terrorists, Mr. Liu. If they want, let them enter Cameroon. And we are saying that how is it going to show in the socio-political situation in Cameroon? Mr. Liu, any president in Cameroon, let this be as a sign and as evidence that nobody has monopoly over power and nobody is an ancient of days. When you come as a head of state, you do not come to serve a system which does not belong or does not derive from your own people. You come to reflect your own people, and if you do well with your people, if you live well among your people, which enemy are you going to create? There will be no enemy for you. There will be no enemy to rise up, except even if the West comes in to want to use somebody, it will become very difficult. That solidarity is what we don't have. So we will keep having these kind of things. Either a president, we saw here with Gbagbo, we saw here Laurent Gbagbo, what happened in Ivory Coast.
Okay, what happened in Ivory Coast?
In Ivory Coast, what happened there with how will I put it, Ouattara? So you have one person who supports this and another person does not support this other person. So it becomes a very challenging thing when we allow our doors to be open.
If you guys are saying that he has been taken out by foreign powers, it could be a myth. Is it also because he played that role of a stabilizer in the sub-region? We are talking about moving down to the Central African sub-region and up north.
The truth is that we have to be very...
The skipper around it.
Yes, we have to be very rational when it comes to these leaders in Africa. One thing is certain. The people from the West do not defend the people of a nation in Africa. They defend the puppet.
Okay.
Once they are interested in protecting that puppet, as long as the puppet maintains the deal they signed before coming to power, the puppet is very submissive. There will be no challenge. If you follow Idriss Deby's movement when he came to power in 1990, of late, Idriss Deby has not been submissive to the French government. France asked him to intervene in Central African Republic, he refused. Idriss Deby, one of the presidents that stood against the CFA. Idriss Deby's recent policy violated France's interest of the petroleum that goes in charge. If you look, he has not been a student as before. He equally said it was the French government that forced him to stay in power, that he was not interested in staying in power. Idriss Deby, for dying, changed the constitution that you are going to run for 2 tenures in office and then you back out. Now, if you look, all these new policies established by Idriss Deby, they are anti-French policies, because French plant monarchs in Africa and call them democrats. I repeat, they plant monarchs in Africa and call them democrats. The moment you refuse to submit to their whims and caprices, you become an anti-French policy agent as a president. Your days are counted. And the bad thing I have is this, or the worry I have, I beg your pardon, is that Africans are always available to be used by these strange powers to destroy their own. If a man starts protecting the interest of his people, that man has turned from a tyrant to a messiah. If a man starts protecting the interest of his nation, he has turned from a dictator to a democrat. Real democracy is when a man turns and begins to defend the interests of his people. And this is where most African leaders are killed. Magufuli was killed because he had the interests of Tanzanians at heart. Sir Richard Tobert in Liberia was killed because he had the interests of Liberians at heart. Samora Machel was killed because he had the interests of Mozambicans at heart. One of the things we must understand is this: the moment you start developing interest, right now, it will not take long, you will hear either Museveni is dethroned, assassinated, or deposed. Why? He has gotten knowledge that his years in power has not helped the Ugandans for anything. He has come of age and he wants to correct the errors he made as a young president. This time around, people don't seem to catch the revelation. You cannot hold somebody because of his yesterday. You cannot keep on characterizing someone because of the errors of yesterday. If somebody starts changing to see the benefit of the people, this Church Cameroon pipeline that is going on, it is Idriss Deby recently that did everything possible, even though he practiced clanization of yes, his family members. It is Zakaria Idriss Deby that is the ambassador of Church to the Arab Emirates. You have another Itno Deby who is the ambassador of Church to South Africa, and most of his family members are inside the government. That is one of his weaknesses. That is the danger we have to point out. But recently, Idriss Deby has been very much against France's policies in Chad. And my problem is not being against it. My problem is, who are those vessels who make themselves available to be used by an individual to kill your person that is working for the betterment of your people? If at all he was securing peace in the G5 Sahel area, it should have been the joy for Mauritania, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger to send forces to protect his interests. Because one man that has always gone to the war front, and it is a prestige and an honor that a president died at the war front. That shows that he was a patriot. He had burden for his people. How many presidents die at war front? Most of them die in hospitals in Swiss. Some die in France. Even common delegates and parliamentarians die in hospitals in European countries. No wonder Vladimir Putin said that Africa is like a cemetery to its citizens. When they want to go and enjoy money, they go to France. When they are sick, they go to Switzerland. And when they die, they bury them in Africa. Is Africa a cemetery? If a man is at the war front and dies while fighting, I think he should be applauded. If he was something yesterday, he's not the same thing today. We cannot take the past to conclude people's recent behaviors.
But strategically, what was the role, that skipper role that he played for West Africa, Northwest? Because Chad was that junction point that linked North of Africa, West Africa, yes, and down south.
If there is anybody, Abubakar Shekau, whom is the president of the Boko Haram, can stand and testify that is dreaded by most of the militant groups in the North of Africa, is Idriss Deby. Idriss Deby did not just fight. You see, he was not just protecting the interests of Chad. Idriss Deby sent forces to Mali.
Yeah, remember.
He sent forces to Mali to defend. He sent forces even to let's not go into that, other African countries that he sent forces. That was like a kind of, how do I put it, a kind of polyvalent that was playing the role in quelling down crises in countries. And that was the strength of Chad. Every nation has its strength. Cameroon's strength is agriculture. I will sing it to you tomorrow. The strength of America is technology. The strength of Chad is war. Chad was like a kind of fire extinguisher when it comes to Central and West Africa. When it comes to crisis, it was Chadian soldiers that were used more in that area. Now, Idriss Deby was playing this pivotal role in intervening to quell down the activities of all these different groups. I've mentioned of the Am Rasul, Greater Islamic for Sahel, Al-Murabitum, Al-Shabaab, and even the FARC rebels. Idriss Deby was used by most of these countries to fight. My grief was when the people were making advances towards him. You remember that these same rebels attempted killing him. They made 2 advances. France intervened. Where was France when this last attack came? Because they began fighting from Maho. Maho is 300 kilometers away from Jamena. That was when they advanced through Sudan. And if you see the forces that are coming, the colors of those people are not even Chadians. It's mixed. It's Libyans and Chadians. Why? I told you of different grievances in tribal groups that are in charge. There is a Zakawa, there is a Kablo. Those are tribes in charge. These tribes have differences. People like Yusana Bray, Wadaye, Tombambai, who had run that country, had grievances because their own persons were kicked out of power through coup d'etat. Now there is this difference and ethnic crisis amongst them. Gukunu Wede was a Libyan, stroke Chadian, who was also outside of power. So if you see these intertribal differences, they must have contributed to play a pivotal role influenced by the people called France to bring this man down. Nobody could kill Idriss Deby if you are not close to him. I have said it. What is destroying the bean seed is within the bean seed.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Leo of the channel. It's okay. I'm sure the technicians are working on that. Greetings, Mr. Leo, and happy birthday to the apostle. I share the same view with the apostle. I'm yet to believe that the Field Marshal Deby could have fallen from a bullet of inexperienced jihadists. How do we even explain a marshal fallen like a mere soldier who was at the front line, despite the presence of officers, commanders, colonels, and generals? Deby fell from a bullet from within. El Hajj Muhammad, writing from Yaoundé. Good evening to you, El Hajj. Happy birthday, my humble apostle, and many more years of wisdom. All of God are blessings. Belinda, also watching from Yaoundé. Greetings, great show. Mr. Leo, just confirming with Apostle Ambe from the pictures, it's not a bullet, it's not a battlefield encounter. The gaping hole on his neck and the substance coming from his right ear shows a pistol was fired through his left ear. Jimmy James, writing from Yaoundé there. Good evening, Leo. My name is Ngoran Protus in Yaoundé. I want to tell you people something today. I've always said this in many platforms, that everything that is happening in Africa is the preparation of the Third World War organized by France. Will not take up to 15 years if dictions are not taken. Good evening, Mr. Leo. I'm glad to be part and fully involved in today's topic. It teaches a lot. The death of Idriss Deby will set example of other heads of state who don't want to leave power. Beware, Africa. Ibale, writing from Kumba. Stop calling, please. When you call, I won't be able to read the messages. Good evening to you. Kalis Choka, who is watching us from Yaoundé. Also, greeting to you, Kalis' mother, Mama Princess is Suna Juliet, and the friend Mami Julie, all watching us from Yaoundé. Now, what are the dangers for his departure should whoever is taking over not be able to play the role that he has played this far? What is the possible consequence on us down this way? I'm talking about in the south.
Yes, you think, one of the things that the person is going to take over from him will be to actually try to bring people together, first of all, to rebuild, to get used to the system. Because, and usually it's not a day's job. You take time. When you take over power, people think that things just have to happen, at a strike of an iron. But no, you have to get used to the system. Even though it is his son, you understand that it is his son, but I don't know what kind of diplomacy the son has done to be able to bring out this country out of this mire. It is going to actually be a Herculean task for him, and we understand that. Let me come back to the demise of Idriss Deby. You know, it is a film that was well staged. You know, we usually say that in the battlefield, if somebody receives bullet from the back, it implies that the person was running away. And that a real man received bullets on the chest. So it was well mounted. That issue was well mounted for those who know what it is all about, because there's much that meets the eye.
Yeah, but if we are to go by the thesis that maybe it was an in-house job, it will be easier to get at him from behind.
Oh, of course, that's what we are saying. That's what we are saying, that it is something that was well staged. That is something that probably either it's from the house, and it couldn't have been if it's not from the house. And now the question I ask is, what does Chad gain when Idriss Deby Senior goes and Idriss Deby Junior comes on?
Yeah.
That is a question we are asking ourselves, because we see this as a child's play, because really it was a real coup d'etat from the fact that we know that they really wanted to change the situation. I think that this shouldn't have been the kind of film that should be acted. And therefore, we look at somebody, and you know, let me look at this. There is this issue of African leaders who want to serve Africans. Immediately, you show up your head and you think that you want to work for Africans, know that they cut your head immediately. And they cut your head immediately. And that is what happened. I mean, like Apostle Ambe said, recently, Idriss Deby has shown himself to be a pelican. That kind of a bird that wounds himself to feed the young. And that is how he has died. And the West does not want to see this. Remember that Idriss Deby is a godson. Is a godson of Gaddafi. And people know. Idriss Deby graduated from Muammar Gaddafi military academy in Libya. And he paid allegiance to Gaddafi. And you know that he took power thanks to Gaddafi, and that is why up to today Hissène Habré is not in good terms with Libya, because he took power thanks to Gaddafi. And so we understand how Gaddafi went and what Gaddafi stood for. In 2015, Idriss Deby started the issue of the changing the Fcfa. Yes. It didn't go well in the eyes of the West, and the man said it. There was an interview. He said it and said it clear, and said very soon this is going to happen. Somebody who starts saying that, is putting himself really at the mercy of the West. And that is what has happened in recent years. You remember when he stood up in the Sahel and became really what we are calling today a field marshal, because that was a real name, not like those who take names that are not what the names. First, in 2010, he sent 400 soldiers to Central African Republic. In 2013, he went into alliance with France and sent 2,000 soldiers to Mali. And then people were asking, look at this man. So this man in a turbulent country like this, he wants to show that even though France was in collaboration with him, they started asking themselves.
We saw him come through Cameroon to fight Boko Haram.
Yeah.
Recently from France, from Chad, he moved over into Nigeria.
And came out. So this is somebody that was already putting up his head and showing his head so much for the liking of the West. And like Mr. Baku said, we are in a continent whereby they do not want to see somebody who want to show up and feel as if he's going to be a savior who is going to salvage Africa from a situation. They don't want to see it. They want us to be at the begging end. They want us always to be at their mercy. But now we are blaming ourselves Africans, because all these things are happening because we keep on envying. We keep on being used by the West, because we think that only what comes from the West is good. Now, for this to be solved, let Africans be able to develop their own country and their own countries, so that you do not envy anything from France. You don't go to France when you are sick. When you have a little foot surgery, you go to France. When there's anything, you go to Europe or go to America and what some of the. So we are actually at the mercy of these people, and that is why you find that Deby and Chad being in a strategic position, the West knew that because Cameroon, the Central African region, the Sahel, and everyone was looking at Chad at that strategic position, and knowing that Deby being a strong man and somebody who has proven his word, not just somebody who was talking, they could ally with him and many other things could happen. But since Deby started, putting up himself as a man who could stand for the people, it started not going well for the Western world. And it is very easy to penetrate. It is very, very easy to penetrate the African world because we have proven ourselves that we are still poor and we want to, we keep on longing for what is not ours. It has happened like that, it happened like that in Burkina Faso. The very person who killed Thomas Sankara was still his own, one personal person. The very in Libya, is countless in Africa. Now we are beginning to ask ourselves, where are we going to? We keep on blaming the West. Yes, the West is coming behind to do that. But what is our responsibility as an African continent and as Africans? Will we keep on, actually, with this military coup d'etat? The level of democracy is in the 21st century, and I think that we should have to keep that going. We have to take that upon ourselves. We have to take that as actually a belief, a credo, and take it and get ahead and get out of it and shame the West.
Good evening to you, Sisiko, Oscar, and to you, Bar Joseph, Bujo, Willie, Echo. Good evening to you, Kan Edwin. Good evening to you, Jack Shigo, Chafi Zaki. Good evening to you, my brother Mundibeta, Julius Kango. Good evening to you, Mbela, Bruno Awuru Romaric Ako. Good evening to you, Swilaru Pros, and to you, Mbungong Valerie Tamba. Ndip Tabe Ebot, always watching. Good evening to you, El Bango, Anita Enotakang. Good evening to you, Favor Desmond, and to you, Ish Kobe. Tanyu Emas, good evening to you, Godi New Kongi. I hope that I really pray you join us one day to also participate in the program because you're always watching. Christy Atabang, good evening to you, Brian Cypren, Peprish Futuris, good evening to you, Zacharias Ashum, and to you, Tanyu Emas, and to Tabang Enter, Brian Cypren, Bridget and Joma, good evening to you, Tabang. Yes, all of you watching us on social media, good evening to you. Now, if we conclude that it is an in-house job or it is a foreign sponsored job, how do we understand that Idriss Deby father is taken out and Junior is installed? Is he going to weather the storm? Because others would have imagined that by now, if the father could easily be taken out by these guys, by now the son should not still be resisting. How do we explain this?
Mr. Liu, you see, that's the issue with the African system and the African head of states. We do not know how to build systems which does not need to depend on persons. We instead build systems which depends on one man, and when that one man falls, it becomes a whole chaos. And that is why you realize that Africa cannot advance, because we have a root core problem in all these other 53 African countries, so to say. Similar problems. And what are these problems, Mr. Liu? It comes back to the time when the African continents gained their independence, so to say, where they were being looked inside of a confinement. And you realize that there are two types of independence. One by which a person gains financial liberty, political emancipation. Another one is through bribery and corruption. That is where Africa is. For Africa to gain its own independence, it had to negotiate. Give me this, I give you this. And that is how Africa became independent in the 60s. It did not gain it by taking it. It gained its independence by negotiating with the West. And that is why you realize that many of these leaders who entered power, like the apostle was saying, that you cannot take somebody's past to judge his future. No, it works like that. Whatever a man sows, that's what you reap. Whether if you change tomorrow, it does not stop you from paying the prices for what you did yesterday. You will suffer it. It's very normal. So what I'm saying here is that if you look carefully, Mr. Liu, the question I keep asking is that must you study abroad to be qualified to be a head of state in Africa? Must you die in power? Must you be won in an election before you leave power? That is the problem we have in Africa. We are not able to build systems whereby which we, including our presidents, our governments, depend on. These are systems where you don't need to be qualified.
for these systems to work. The systems have already been, it's just like an autopilot. There are cars today. You don't need it to have, you don't need to go to driving school. You just sit inside, you punch your location, your destination, and the car takes you where you are going to. Plane have autopilot. Pilot sleep for 3 hours. The plane is moving because it's on auto. It knows what to do. That is how Europe long ago understood that countries also do work like mobile phones. You build a mobile phone, it has nothing to do with age group. It has nothing to do with qualification. They have been designed to take you through. And that is where Africa is still far behind. It's like taking an operating system that runs on a 3rd and a 7th generation machine and you put it on a Pentium 2, it will crash. Africa is not at that point where it was supposed to be applying democracy because Africa was so regressed as compared to the West. Giving an example is like Dangote and a civil servant. Dangote has built a system where he can sleep in Shanghai, in Dubai, and money is entering. But a civil servant will need to use his mental ability and his physical force to bring ends meet to his family. That is where Africa is, and we need to grow. And that is why you realize that we are so destabilized. We are not united. If you are talking of Idriss Deby, should he stand like one man? If he has repented and he has changed, should he stand as one man? That is why I still go back to say that the OAU was the only organization that could have liberated Africa and all its other colonies. When, like I said, how did we get terrorism in Africa? The first was in 2002, Boko Haram. In 2002, that was just a year after the bombing of the 9/11 2001 World Trade Center. Mr. Leo, I followed the events on how terrorism, how will I put it, emerged in Africa. I have vivid knowledge on how it has started. What I'm telling you is that what Idriss Deby has been fighting, he has been fighting the wrong battle. What we are fighting here with the Boko Haram, we are fighting the wrong battle. Because these elites have sided with the West, and they are adopting the system of the West and doing what the West is telling them. They sit, make analysis because a group of people, disgruntled people, very soon will start calling the armed separatist fighters in the Northwest and Southwest also terrorists. That is how it's going to end. I remember in Nigeria, the Zamfara adoption of 300 and something students, the last one, the government was already going to classify them as terrorists. But these are individuals from a testimony of another adoptees who testified that they asked them question, why are you doing this? And they said, no, we have problem with the government. What is causing terrorism in Africa? Poverty, bad leadership, so many other things where just because leaders do not have goodwill for their nation, a president comes into power and the presidential seat become a tribal thing, and all other tribes in Africa, which was supposed to be the beauty of Africa, everybody now gets into place to take that presidential seat and make it also another kingdom. So this is a problem in Africa where Africa needs to build its own system that conforms to the Africans. If we continue to apply system which does not conform, like I said, we cannot, what is going to work for Europe cannot work for us. We don't use the same currency. There are so many things that does not conform with our system and their own system. So we must learn to understand who really is the enemy. We are talking here of France interfering in the African affairs. I want to ask Mr. Leo, like in the definition of terrorist, you are giving a definition of who a terrorist is. Using an unlawful means, either to intimidate a people or to suppress a people. I want to ask any of these head of states in Africa, which of them have veto power at the level of the United Nations? None. Coming now back to the first article and the second article. The first article of the second charter states that the United Nations is to promote equality and self-determination. The second article of the seventh charter says that the United Nations has no right to violate the sovereignty of another member state. Why is it that we are having France interfering openly in the eyes of everybody, and then yet we are calling Boko Haram jihadists? All the names they have acronyms they have given at the level of the West, and here Africa is fighting African. When the troops enter into Central Africa, 5,100 troops came from France and entered into Central Africa. Who were they coming to kill? They were coming to kill Africans. So we need to remove this mentality, and African head of states needs to go into all-inclusive dialogue with their nation. You enter into power, it should not be a tribal thing. Build a system. We saw what Magufuli did. Even the apostle said he welded 200 tribes together. It means a man reflects the aspiration of his people. So that is the core of the problem in Africa. Africa is not a sovereign continent. It's a slave. And we have seen that if you have independence, if you are, how will I put it? If you are mature, and Mr. Liu, you have to understand this. The West understands that you cannot rule mature people. You have to either keep them on a state of fear or poverty in order to rule them. And that is why they realize that they have to keep Africa at this level. Because if Africa emerges, they cannot control Africans. That's the simple truth. Now I've landed for now.
Okay. Good evening to you, Emmanuel Ekbumbang, watching us from the Netherlands, and to you, Mengot Efiom, Jonas Ketu, good evening to you, Makaveli, Sangana Fobi, good evening to you, Mbungong, Julius Kango, good evening to you, Willie Eko, our Valentine, good evening to you, Vicky Best, and to you, Kudian Crossland, good evening to you, yes, Brian Cyprian, good evening to you. Now, we have seen the French actually stop attacks or advances that were aimed at removing President Idriss Deby. We have seen these guys, the rebel groups, actually threatening to take him out of power for some time now. Why was he allowed to face these guys alone? Why did they not act like they have done previously?
Like I said earlier, anybody who does not have a mastery of the operations of the West in Africa will not be able to understand how things operate. Have you taken note that every time the West defends somebody in Africa, he lasts in power? And once the West organizes a coup d'etat against you, you don't last in power. Denis Sassou Nguesso, in this particular Congo Brazzaville, came to power via a coup d'etat sponsored by France. Since he came to power, other attempts have come against him. It did not work. Because when France is using you to take power, you succeed.
He let Pascal Lissouba took over. He came back.
He came back through a coup d'etat and took over power. Now, when they are using you to take over power, it's easier. When other forces want to take over you when you are in power, it is difficult. Why? Because they have the technical know-how, number one. Number two, they have the elements on ground, and they have the international coverage and security to protect you both on all platforms in the world. France will defend United Nations. La Francophonie is his property. Defend you in Commonwealth. Defend you in the AU. The AU is his property. So diplomatically, they can protect you as well as security-wise. That's the reason I will tell you that every time you see an African dictator who has been succumbing to the whims and caprices of France suddenly starts working against French policies, becomes anti-France in Africa, your days are numbered. The same goes to any colony that is dominated by America. The same goes to any colony that is dominated by Britain. As long as those powers are behind you, you will succeed. The Biafra War of 1967 to 1970, where you had Ojukwu Odumegwu and Effiong fighting against Gowon. Britain and America were behind Gowon. France, through Charles de Gaulle, wanted to use Gabon and Cameroon because Ojukwu promised giving him 10% of the fuel in the east. But it was even difficult because why? Britain and America were stronger, and de Gaulle's support for Ojukwu was not even open. It was something underneath. What paralyzed these people in the east here? It is because they gave an injunction, open injunction. They paralyzed the importation of protein in the land of the east, and that was the reason why more people died of kwashiorkor and malnutrition than gone. It was an economic sabotage that they used. That's what I'm saying. When these guys are behind you, they will use every measure at the international platform. The same goes with the case of Ouattara and Gbagbo. When Gbagbo refused that Cocoa will not leave Ivory Coast anymore to France, they said, so, yes. Whatever had been dangling, looking for power, tried to use Robert Gueye and the rest, when Gbagbo stood against or became an anti-French agent, it didn't take long. They kicked him out of power. I'm giving you this analysis because I know very well that most people are watching this program. As long as somebody is submissive to these guys, I don't know how they do it, but my problem is this: we can find a cure. Because if I start giving analysis, we'll not leave this place today. We can find a cure. Africans should start protecting the prophets that God sent to them. Prophets are not only those who stand on pulpit and preach. Any good leader that works for the interest of a people is a prophet sent in that office of leadership. The interest of the nation is more important than your interest. Whoever gave himself as a vessel to kill Idriss Deby because they want to satisfy their self-aggrandizement at the expense of the masses is a demon incarnate. And this is the sickness that is creeping into every nook and cranny of the continent Africa. I don't know who was used also to poison Magufuli. You are also an idiot of the 21st century. Me, I don't know who they are planning to use right now to attack Kamer. And I don't know who they are planning to use to attack Lazarus Chakwera, because those are leaders in Africa who are setting a blueprint, looking up to the people first than themselves. And let us not allow history to repeat itself again. My problem is not the West. My problem is the dormant, foolish, nincompoop Africans who make themselves vessels to be used by these confused people on West to kill our own prophet. But Mali said, for how long shall they kill our prophet? It's funny that they are not killing this prophet by confronting the prophet. They are using our own idiots to kill our prophet. It was the people that Jesus came for that the enemies used to kill Jesus. We should learn from history. I will never plot a coup or kill a president that is increasing the economic standard, taking the economy to a medium income economy, increasing infrastructure, boosting up the standard of living. Such a president should not only be given the chance to rule, he should be given sufficient chance to rule. We don't need democrats in Africa, we need enlightened despots. The democracy of Africa is not needed. We need an enlightened despot. An enlightened despot is somebody that knows how to get the job done no matter how long he stays in power. And I think we have to come of age that if somebody is paying you 200 billion to eliminate a man that is taking care of the entire nation, that money should not be good enough. Why will you be penny wise and pound foolish? Who deceived us? The Chinese call us a group of chimpanzee named orangutan. I think that one should ring a bell in our heads. Chinese are even praying to have their president as a live president, because why? The president has taken the Chinese economy to a higher level. If we have someone like the Singaporean president, like the Magufulis, I think people who are not even concerned with his security should be more interested in his security. Why do we make ourselves so vulnerable, cheap, and very useless in the hand of the enemy, to be used as tools to satisfy our interests at the expense of an entire nation? All those who plotted the coup against Idriss Deby, you are the worst enemy we have in Africa, not the West.
Okay, good evening to you, Samuel Ambin G, and to you, Kibila Bright. Good evening to you guys watching. And now, the question many will ask you already, why France did not intervene to stop the advances of the rebels. It was
anti-French policies.
Yes, let's consider that France is the foreigner here. We have African Union. We saw African states move into Central African Republic when things were not going right for them. We have seen ECOWAS forces move into the Gambia.
Of course.
Yes, to send out the Achami. They saw danger approaching Deby, and they're watching that.
But I think that this danger was unprecedented. This is something that happened, I would say, inadvertently. It is not something like there was some planning. Deby didn't plan beforehand to carry out this operation that he did.
No, but the rebels were approaching.
They were approaching, and this is something that has been happening not just today. I gave an example of 2008, where even they approached right to the presidential gate.
Yeah,
and
but
they were
see,
pushed
another
away.
question that
Yes.
before those guys came to the presidential gate, the African Union has been existing. Why would they watch one of theirs?
And it's very interesting to know that the African Union existing, and it's a rubber stamp, as we say. You even say, as we talk about 2008, it was not even the African Union that intervened. It was France that intervened and helped Idriss Deby out of that situation. So, and we begin to ask a question: is the African Union a two-legged bulldog? You even know that the chair of the African Union is a Chadian. I mean, it's a paradox. And then now you begin to know that if he could not actually act fast to defend his own president, who, of course, you know that before you become a chair in the African Union, you are first of all endorsed by your own president. Means that actually, if he saw this danger coming to his president, he will have preempted the situation. But he didn't. And that translate, make us understand the fact that the African Union that we have is just a name that is buried. And you know, at one moment they express the issue of finance, and the African Union keeps on talking about the issue of finance, and that we don't have enough finance to be able to, and that is why it is being sponsored by Europe, by France, it's being sponsored by China, even the headquarters was built by China. And I mean, it will make us understand that it is a body that perhaps has the will to act, but they do not have the possibility to act.
African heads of state are actually poor. Are they poor?
They are, as individuals, they are not poor. You know of many of them who have, fortunes that, even the 100 generation will live on. They are not poor, and even as countries, African countries are not poor. And this make us understand that there is no collaboration, and there's no collaboration between them. Remember the last interview that Idriss Deby did, international interview with RFE. I watched that interview, and luckily it was the journalist was a Cameroonian, and then the journalist was very frank. He was very frank to ask Idriss Deby. He asked the Niger president. He asked the Chesapeake of Idriss. There were three of them who sat, and they asked them, what is the problem? Is it that the African president cannot come together and form a union, or is it that they are being manipulated, or that they are being looked down upon by the European or American president? And of course, it was Idriss Deby himself who answered that question very, very intelligibly. And he said there is lack of collaboration between them. That says a lot. That, in Africa, we want to be strong people. We want to be strong individuals. We do not want to build a strong continent, a strong institution in our continent. We want to be strong individuals. And therefore, when they see you having, outside that credibility, having that prowess, the other president want to put you down. And you know that it is not only the citizens that help to put you down, even the West pass through other presidents to put you down. And that is the fact. And the moment you hear the West condemning a president, know that that president is the best president for Africa. That is one thing that Africans should understand. If the West starts saying that you are a dictator, you are this or you are that, you are that, know that that president is the best president for Africa, and we should guard that president. And therefore, president in Africa, they want to be seen by the West. And it is, first of all, the president, a Cameroonian, who said he's the best people, not even the best student. He said the best people of Mitterrand. This says a lot, that each president in Africa wants to be looked upon as very credible in the eyes of the European. He doesn't want to look credible in the eyes of his own peers. And there is a president who said, it was Robert Mugabe, he castigated the president and said, when there is and even Paul Kagame after reiterated that, when there is an African Union, you don't see most African presidents. But when there is a small meeting in France or in Europe or in America, you see all of them go out of their sick bed and they are there in those meetings. This tells you enough that African presidents, they are not in collaboration. What they want to do is, because they have been put there, but the invisible hand of the West, they want to be seen to be very, very credible in the eyes of the West, and they don't care about whatever happens in Africa. And that is what we are suffering from.
We are taking a short break. After this, we continue with our discussions out here in our studios at Fengudrombange, Douala. You're watching Prime Hour on My Media Prime. We will continue with you, Andrin Ateme Bako. We raised the issue of the French who could not protect him, and we are also asking the question about the African Union. Now, the CEMAC sub-region to which he belonged also did not do anything for him. Is it to say that we have to start rethinking this our partnership, in case a brother or sister is in a problem, we should be able to intervene? And the question I will even ask you is, what justifies the reluctance of any African head of state to want to come to the assistance of another in times of trouble, like what we have seen in Chad?
Well, like my brother here said, is that the African head of states do lack collaboration. They do not collaborate. And you come to realize that many of such African head of states who have fallen victims, like Idriss Deby, how will I put it, they say that the decisions you take today is going to affect the tomorrow. So some of the decisions that some of these African leaders took even before entering power still haunts them at their very last day. You see, it will still be very possible for us to keep having things like this, because we are dealing here with a very united front, which is very difficult to defeat them unless Africa becomes one. That is the only way Africa can free itself from all of these invaders. In 1884, that was when the West sat down together in Berlin and realized that if they did not come together and settle their differences, they will not succeed in Africa. And it was very important that they sat in that meeting and resolved their internal issues within them. There was no African at that level of that meeting where they decided to carve out Africa and gave portions to each person as they will. That is the genesis of African of the problems of Africans. Coming now right up to when the imperialists decided to now give them independence, was not independence they fought for. In Yoibe in the 1957, who fought here, who opened the UPC for self-determination to fight for Cameroon to gain its independence, was assassinated by France. Only to tell you that the African continent was already won by the West. So whoever is entering into power, you must negotiate with them. That simply means that if at a time where you begin to fail in those agreements, they will remove you out of the game. So it's like making a covenant with the devil. And then at one point now, you seem to want to back out. It will haunt you. So the best thing is going back to the roots and start setting the right principles. And how will it go? The African head of states, the African elites needs to hold a meeting where all of them are in one place. If that meeting is going to draw for 1 month, where they go there and settle their differences and unite themselves, the West will not stop entering Africa. It enters is because Africa is disorganized. Africa got no systems to protect their national interests and the interests of their population. So we have a very core problem which goes back right from the root, that if we do not solve it, we will still having our own people killing those who have repented, killing the messiahs at our put. They kill all kinds of people, the ones who are born to bring changes, the one who became demons and now become sons of light. They kill all. It's only because Africans do not see Africans like, how will I put it, like people of the same origin. So these are things that, Mr. Leo, if we don't change them, I'll give you a good example. When Idriss Deby entered into power in 1990 and he began serving, I want to ask you, which of these African head of state, apart from the few that we have mentioned, reflect the people? Like I said, if you stand in front of a mirror, the mirror is supposed to reflect what is standing in front of that mirror. That is just who a head of state is. You need to reflect the people you are representing. But we don't have head of states that reflect their people. That is a problem. You have an individual who supports the West. We are talking here of how, like the apostle was talking of
people who want to kill their own. I want to ask you one question, Mr. Liu, coming back to the basis and the genesis of this thing. When you keep people in abject poverty, they say a hungry man is a lion that can kill at any moment. You have starved the people for generations. You have stripped away dignity and integrity in the lives of people. Honor is something all men are born with. It cannot be granted to you. So if these people have lost their honor and their integrity, and it comes to a time where you give him an opportunity for him to see light, he will kill anybody to take it. That is where our African presidents are making a mistake. When you get into power, face your people and build their lives up. Reflect the people in which you represent. You will not have enemies. You will not have this kind of... It will be difficult for the West to enter in and penetrate. Look at other African countries. You find a president there doing well. You look at this other African country, next neighboring African country is chaos. This one is here doing his own thing, this one is here doing its own thing. Nobody collaborate, nobody communicate. You want to talk about the AU. I want to ask you one question, Mr. Liu. If I open a business and you give me capital for that business, that simply means I'm working for you. That is how the AU is. AU came up in 2002. After 2001 September 11 bombing of the World Trade Center, AU is here as a spy of United Nations and European Union. AU is not here for the African people. The only organization that was ever created in 1963 was the OAU, which was built by Pan-Africanists that fought for self-determination in all these colonies because they knew that the independence in the 60s were not genuine independence because the presidents have negotiated to become independent. That's why many of these countries do not own their own currency. Those are indicators to tell you that this thing we are talking about is a genesis issue. If we don't start tackling them from the root by coming together, that means that it will take the United Africans to take this battle at the global front. Where is the global front? At the level of the United Nations. We talk about human rights violation. That is a human rights violation. You're talking about gender equality, equality and all of that. Why is it that, like I said, Mr. Liu, all family heads come together in one meeting? Each of those families have self-determination, have veto power. Africa is bigger than Europe, America and China. In a union where Africa is the mother nature of the world, Africa was not granted veto power. That means that having the right to defend your own continent, we are left exposed and the mercy of the West. And that is why I keep saying that the problem we started in the 60s was the deception that democracy through the West was going to fast accelerate and develop Africa. You cannot apply a system which a man who has successfully built his empire using individuals who were dictators and protected the interests of their own country to outlive them, where even if tomorrow they are not there, those systems can continue to favor their countrymen. You take that same system and brought to slaves, men who have not been freed, and you are expecting them to develop, you are expecting them to do well. When you have that kind of system and the system crashes, who do you call? You call back the vendors and the developers of those software. So that is where Africa is, and that is why I insist that if Africans are going to pursue their self-determination, having 800 to 900 million young Africans, they must understand that Africans need to come together. And Mr. Liu, I will say this lastly. The curse which Africa is suffering today is a curse that went way back in the days of the middleman monopoly. Africans need to start seeking solidarity with the Africans, whether they call them African Americans, in the Jamaicans, in all the islands, until Africa begins to unite with all the other Africans who were taken here out of slavery. Africa is never ever going to emerge because they understood. How do you keep a people under 85%? You take 85% of their natural reserves and then you give them 15%. That means that majority to 80 to 85% of its population lives in abject poverty, and the government becomes the breadwinner. Everybody wants to run to the government, and then the West uses the government for its own interest, and everybody becomes corrupt. Even the citizens work in compliance with their government and the West to destroy their own nation. That is where Africa is today. So if Africa is going to succeed, we need to build solidarity with the Africans who are in America, with the Africans who are in all those islands scattered abroad. Africans are rich. In one city alone in America, you have more doctors than you have in the entire Nigeria. Africans have capacity. If we don't come together, and like I just said, that is what they did in 1884. We need to grow beyond the point where we are depending on one man. Idriss has fallen down today. Everybody is crying, trouble has come. Why should there be trouble? That one man has fallen. If it were a system, there's another replacement. We saw what Magufuli did. Magufuli left and a woman took over. A system had been set in place. Mr. Leo, we need African head of states. I keep saying, you don't need to be 30 years in power, having to be used by a demon, claiming that you were used, possessed by another spirit. And now that you have come to your senses, that is where now you are having problems with France. Let me tell you something, Mr. Liu. You will pay whether you have changed, you have repented, as Paul did in the Bible. He killed Christians. He too was killed, even though he was of God. So those things, you cannot negotiate them. We need to change our mentality.
Good evening, Mr. Liu and the panelists in the studio. Please tell the technicians to make some adjustments. The station is not the best. We can't get you people friendly. Auntie Marie is writing from Kumba. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Your speakers are not the best. Your technicians should do something. I'm sure they have worked on that already. That was in the beginning of the program. Good evening, Mr. Liu. We Anglophones are still making the errors we committed before independence. That's why we are suffering today. Let's speak with wisdom. Reserve your words. We refuse to pacify these world powers, and they blacklisted us and still making sure we never secure what we seek. Ayafo is writing from Douala. Muhammadu, my friend, writing from Yaoundé, says, good evening, Mr. Liu. Happy birthday to Apostle. What's sad news? I see another Libya in the making this time, right at the center. May God save Africa. Greetings, Makeji Charles in Yaoundé. The topic is very crucial, and the apostle is very accurate in this opinion, because it's like France is the reason French countries seem as if they are marching backwards, even with their potentials due to these others. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Great man of God, Mr. Ambe is a brain box. Just to see that African countries are really blind, killing themselves in every corner. Papa Oyuyu is also writing from Douala here. Good evening, Mr. Liu. And baffles me why France calls itself a democratic country while immediately embracing a cool leader. Semak sits and claps. Is it because of the currency change? He preached Africans should learn to use the eyes in seeing, not hearing. Is it because of our history written by the West? Okay. Henry is writing from Bali. Good evening to you, Henry, and also to you. Lista Montana watching from Yaoundé says, good evening, Mr. Liu. And the great panelist Africans have been used to destroy Africa because of their huge greed. It's Lista Montana. Esther writing from Yaoundé says, good evening, Mr. Liu, and to all the panelists. Happy born day to the apostles. Sorry we have lost a great man of Africa. Okay, good evening to you. Someone is raising this concern. We've not heard much from African heads of states about this, especially with the complete disregard of the constitutional dispositions in Chad, seemingly quietly or silently endorsing what is taking place in Chad. Though we are getting from America, we are getting some politicians in France agitating that they want the constitution of Chad to be respected. Even the bishops of Chad have written extensively that they want the constitution to be respected. But seemingly the AU, all African nations, nobody is talking about that. Is it that their hands are tied also to even call those who are taking part in Chad to respect what the constitution states?
Thomas Isidore Noé Sankara in 1987 said, he that feeds you controls you.
Okay.
Most of the African countries are under yoke, and so they don't have right of themselves to decide what to say. Africans only say what they are told to say. Steve Biko Bantu said, and I repeat, I quote, he said, apartheid is a cancer that it has only one solution. Either you succumb to it or it kills you. In other words, the influence of the West over African territories is so strong to the extent that it's either you accept it or you are eliminated. If at all African presidents will be in Africa, an African president will win an election that does not satisfy the West, African presidents cannot even tweet to appreciate him. When Yoweri Museveni won the elections against Bobby Wine or Robert Kyagulanyi aka Bobby Wine, very few African presidents wished him the best because Britain is not in support and the European Union is not in support of, or was not in support of his victory. That is to tell you that if you begin to project yourself to show that you are supporting somebody that those guys are not supporting, your life is at risk. Idriss Deby cannot die in Africa. First and foremost, Idriss Deby is confronted, is attacked. Idriss Deby belongs to two different fronts, West Africa and North Africa.
And Central
Africa. Now, these collaborators probably would have at least sent peace missions. I remember when this First World War came to Africa, Cameroonian soldiers and other African soldiers were used to oust Germany in Africa. Now we have a man who belongs to an association called CEMAC. We have a man that belongs to the G5 Sahel.
He's threatened severally.
He's threatened severally, and their forces are attacking him from a 300 kilometers drive from Mao, which is a close border to Sudan, right down to N'Djamena is 300 kilometers. Are you telling me that Cameroon, Gabon, Central African Republic, Mali, Burkina Faso, Mauritania, as well as Niger, could not deploy forces to land in N'Djamena and give Idriss Deby the support he needed? When somebody says, what makes me feel that France could be behind this, I can give you instances. These rebels once attacked Idriss Deby in 2008. It was France that intervened. Recently, attempts were made twice. It was France that intervened. When the rebels took over the ancient city of Timbuktu in Mali in 2012, it was French forces that were used to push back the rebels out of the city of Timbuktu. When Gbagbo refused the interest of France over Ivory Coast cocoa, it was French military soldiers that descended to capture Gbagbo, and he was nailed at the ICC. Let me give you an understanding how the operations of the West in Africa is operating. If France has a student in Africa, if he's flogging that student, America is quiet. You see, Joe Biden rose to write that they should respect the constitution, like you said. And bishops are asking to respect the constitution, but France is the one interested in the transition.
Yes, they've
endorsed it.
Yes.
Let me tell you why. His son Abré, who was the president that ruled for 8 years from 1982 to 1990, was placed by America. In 1990, America was concentrating on the Gulf War in Kuwait. So by then, France used their manipulation and brought Idriss Deby to power. America still has that grievances. His son Abré was not killed. They escorted him and left him in the city of Mora. And then Idriss Deby took power and became a French puppet. America has that grievance. So America is sending that information for constitution to be respected, because they don't want France to come back with another person. That's why you see there is a conflicting view between America and France. So America's person, his son Abré, was removed. Now, if you look the case of Idriss Deby that came again to fight against his son Abré, if son Abré was the person that kicked out Gukunu Wede. Gukunu Wede was a Chadian maternally and a Libyan paternally. And so because it was Itno that brought out Gukunu Wede, it was Gaddafi that trained Idriss Deby to revenge on Ifan Abré. So if you look at Ifan Abré, Idriss Deby matter is a matter of Libya, America, France. We are talking because we have gotten research on issues concerning Africa. So when you hear America say they should respect constitution, the constitution is that Chad does not have a vice president. It doesn't have a prime minister. It has but a president of the assembly. The constitution says he has to take power. run it for some time, and then conduct free and fair elections. France knows very well that if at all that man takes power and conduct elections, the son of Idriss Deby, Itno, will never become president. So they say they should suspend the constitution for now. And now, why would they suspend constitution? Because America is creeping back to recover what France stole from them in 1990. So there is a tussle diplomatically. But at the end of the day, France has a greater arm because France has a control over the Chadian military. And that is why you see this rancor. The bishops have written that what France has endorsed is what we stand. That is why we are telling people that you should understand that this thing is far beyond the circle of France, the circle of Chadians. This thing is negotiated at a diplomatic level. Why would they suspect constitution? It is because they know very well that if they go free and fair election, it will not work. And if America send observers to that election, they will never and never manipulate it. That's the reason why they are insisting. In some days from now, Macron will come to chat. Any time from now, they are coming to see if the job was well done. People don't know these France's operations in Africa. The moment you stand against France's policies in Africa, your name is dead. The problem is, I don't know how much they used to promise to the people who carry out those acts. Because this guy, I told you of David Dacko. David Dacko was against France's policies in Africa. They used Jean-Bendel Bokassa to wipe him out of power.
In Central Africa. Yeah.
In Central Africa. That's what I'm telling you. I say, if you know the way they operate, it's not that we are seeing evil, but there's no one who can stop it. The evil is clear.
Okay.
Now, my grievance is this, or my annoyance is this, Mr. Liu. In this 21st century, we are still making mistakes of 19th century. Are they trying to confirm to us that what the Chinese thinks of the black man is true? That we are a species of chimpanzee called the orangutan? I'm still asking this question. Why would somebody be this foolish to cheapen his mentality to be penny wise and pound foolish?
Okay, Mr. Atemibako has said it all. Where we need to move this mentality from our African leaders so that we can globally move forward with true democracy. Good evening to you, Mr. Roland, writing there from Boya. We hope that NCA Insurance is doing well out there under your guide in the Southwest region. I am Neba Ruben. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and to everyone in the house. Good evening to you too. Good evening to you all in the studio. What we need is prayers. We should pray. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I'm Elat in Boya. Please never make a mistake of not calling Apostle Ambe to the program. My name is Timothy Mbonde from Limbe. Good evening, Mr. Liu and the team. The program is so hot and interesting. The panelists are just on target. I wish most of our state leaders are watching the program and can learn from the responsible contributions. Okay, to mix the. Good evening, Mr. Liu and everyone on the panelists. Special greetings to the Apostle Ambe, such a great speaker. He is people like Apostle with such great ideas and love for humanity should be the ones to rule us. Relindis is writing from Kumba. We have borrowed so much from the West, so we cannot run away from them. D is writing from Yaoundé. Good evening to you. And Mr. Tabufo says, greetings, Mr. Liu. Kudos. I'm impressed with Mr. Ebako. Keep up, gentlemen. Tabufo is writing from Bamenda. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Tita Peace. I agree that the problem is disunity in Africa. Okay. Daisy writing from Kumba says, good evening, Mr. Liu, and to all the panelists. African leaders are too greedy that they want to be the head of everything. If the death of President Idriss was truly by an insider, then he brought it on himself. Why will he go to the war front? All this is because of fame and greed. Had it been he stayed back, maybe he wouldn't have died. Many more years of grace, favor, and wisdom to Apostle Ambe. This is writing from Kumba. Yeah, but should we not also question why presidents would have to stay for power for so long? He's been president for above 20 years now, and we have others who have been in power for more than 30 years now.
Yes, this and that's what I said. If you listen to me, I said in 2005, I considered Idriss Deby as a real president who has ruled Chad, and that his reign finished in 2005. That was in 2005 that he finished up his mandate, and it was in 2005, 2006 that actually he scraped up the limits of presidents, and he made it limitless, and that is why you could go for the election 2006. And I said this is a lesson for all the African presidents. And you should know that you cannot say that you are a successful man if you don't have a successor. I always say that every successful man should have a successor. The moment you start thinking that without you this country will not move ahead, then it is wrong. Because the fact of living on and on and on in power is because you think that you are the only one who can fix things. And that is the statement that he made in 2016. He said he scraped up the presidential term because he wanted to bring peace, democracy, and order in a turbulent Chad. And I was asking myself whether he was the only one who could do that. Apart from the fact that he was a military ruler, I don't think that he was the only person who could do that. And therefore, even we are condemning the fact that he has been brutally killed, he inhumanly killed, I think that it should also be an eye-opener to most African presidents and let them know that they should respect if they call it democracy. And this brings us to questioning, is the democracy we have in Africa the same democracy we have in Europe and America? This we say no, because I usually say that there's dictatorship in democracy, and democracy actually is a dictatorship of the majority. That is actually the definition. Democracy is a dictatorship of the majority, because when the majority decide, actually they are dictating on it. But in Africa, it appears as if dictatorship, democracy is a dictatorship of the minority. Because, people use iron fist to rule their people. People do not, you don't care about what, your citizens, they think about. And we are still bringing to, you know that in in Central Africa, normally the president have to be in solidarity with Idriss Deby, because most of them in Central Africa, apart from Twadera, they are all president. They are there, and whether all president or those who have taken off from their father, like Ali Bunga or the rest, and therefore they have to be in solidarity with Idriss Deby, because they know that it is the same thing that happens to them in Central Africa and Africa as a whole. So just days before the demise, Idriss Deby's demise, you had countries that called their citizens who are in Chad to be careful, or to move out of Chad, or to maintain low profile. And Cameroon, curiously, was one of those countries that called their citizens in Chad to maintain low profile, because they knew, the intelligence already knew what was going to happen, and they refused to preempt it. And I think that it is high time, actually, our president realized that you come over to power to be able to rule the people, and you rule the people according to the aspiration or the rules laid down. And we are bringing to questioning the issue of the constitution. That tool that framework they call the constitution, which of course is just there because people think that we have copied from Europe, that there's a country that needs to have a constitution. But normally the time that the constitution is supposed to be respected is the time that the constitution is deliberately and premeditatedly disrespected, like what we are seeing in Chad now. Because in the constitution of Chad, after it's clear, you cannot put a president if you are less than 40 years. But when we look at Idriss Deby Jr. Muhammad, he is about 37 years, which of course is already very, apart from being that he has taken the chance that the president of the National Assembly is supposed to take, and in terms of age, he is not qualified to be. But then people are looking, and you realize that most president, I'm talking first about Central Africa, they have sent words of condolences to him, who actually is taking over the country. What a paradox! That it means that they themselves, the president of the Central African countries, they are endorsing him already. Who else will say the contrary thing when their peers around? They are already giving him and endorsing him and giving a condolence message telling him already that he is the one. I mean, indirectly they are telling him that he is the one in charge and he has to take charge forward. So, you know, criminals work together, and people of the same belief and the same practices, they go together. And there is no way in which a thief will raise an alarm on another thief who is, is stealing. And we are saying that. And there's the saying, it's a cliche which says, you live by the sword, you do by the sword, you shall die by the sword. This saying, this cliche, people take it lightly. And I think it is a lesson. Whether you take power by a coup d'etat, you should know that a woman, it is what you, it is following your footsteps. When I take power by underhanded machinations, you should know that this is the same way in which your own close collaborators are going to, act on you, and it is going to happen to you. So what happens to what happens to the goals happens to the goal. So I think that we need to be very, very careful, and Africa needs to draw back its roadmap.
Now, let's just get back to what Apostle Lambe said earlier on, that he's taken out because he was trying to raise his voice against Fcfa and a host of other Pan-Africanist tendencies. That is the path he was taking. Was it possible for him to engage in such a venture, knowing fully well that he has been president thanks to France? Was he not trying to bite the finger that has been feeding him all this while?
To tell you, all those things are just propaganda. That's the way I look at it. To me, it's all propaganda, because I've given you an indication or an indicator showing you that these countries, or this particular country we are talking of, is not, how will I put it, an independent country. It's a country which depends on the West in order to run its activities. It's very clear.
Because whatever he was saying was
it's not something. That's exactly what I'm telling you, that when you gain independence through bribery and negotiation and corruption, I don't know if you understand me, you cannot at one point want to build out light out of a very corrupted system. You have to break down that system and then start a new one all together. So that is why, to me, I will tell you that, I'll give you a good example. We just heard that the American government is coming up with a project of $30 million to fight against malaria in Africa. And this campaign or this program does not involve any health organization and researchers in Africa. They are not consulted. They have taken the decision there, and they are informing the Africans that they are coming to carry out a research on malaria, build data evidences to improve the health.
Which health organizations structures exist in Africa?
We have a lot. We have a lot of researchers in Africa.
No,
there are a lot of African organizations. We have CDC in Africa. We have other health organizations in Africa.
Center for Disease Control, which is run from the United States.
Whatever it is, I'm just giving you an example that they are just seemingly telling us that we got no qualified researchers, we got no proper health system. Are you understanding me? We got no decision on our own. It's like you are telling your children what you are doing without taking the permission from anybody. Now, when we talk about democracy, does it not show that this is a double standard? This is a Biden's administration. I've given you a very clear example, Mr. Liu. The people we are looking up to, the Africans are so ignorant. I don't know whether it's because they don't carry out research, they don't read news, they don't study and see what really happens. These people that are talking all of these things, Mr. Liu, these are demon incarnates who have left hell and are instructing Africans on what to do. Do you know that in the cabinet of Biden's administration, it is all made up of transgender, bisexual, lesbian, gays, and it has not only ended to LGBT, they have added cure, which means that there's a questioning to one's experimental sexual desire, where you can now transform into an animal and serve in the public service. You can now get married to an animal and serve in the public service. This is what these people are telling us. I'm landing a point here, Mr. Liu. It is just to tell you that when we do not understand that democracy, true democracy, promotes rotational precedence, while there's a constant system that can only be upgraded,
With us here, like I've explained to you, Mr. Leo, our systems are built and dependent on one man who is there protecting a system which he did not create, and then protecting his interests. So the masses of his population suffers, and that is why my main problem with this head of state, you saw what Mugabe did. Mugabe stood up as one man, brought in how will I call it? Brought in democracy in Zimbabwe, one man, one vote. Where at the time in Zimbabwe we had 300 white men controlling how many million Africans. Nobody spoke about. And when he came into power and tried to make sure that Zimbabwe does not become a colony, he received all sorts of sanctions from Europe, from America. All the African head of state, nobody said anything. So all I'm saying here, Mr. Leo, is that the real terrorists, if I will follow the analysis of Apostle Ambe, it shows clearly that the terrorists are from the West. These ones we are fighting here, they are Africans. Africans who disgruntled Africans who are tired and fed up with the system. These are the ones we are now calling them terrorists. But the ones that are head analysis of Apostle Ambe, these are the ones we should be fighting. These are the ones we should be chasing out the way. And we can only do that successfully if we come together as one unit. That is the only way we can succeed. We cannot succeed being divided and being very disorganized. It's very impossible. So the constitution which they are talking about, when the constitution was changed in Ivory Coast, nobody complained. France did not complain. Now they are saying that the constitution, they should maintain the same constitution, because they understand that when they go into election, the West can always decide who next will be in power. Why, Mr. Leo? Because you are dealing here with Africans who got no future in their own country. You are dealing here with Africans who live very abject poverty and, no self-esteem. These are the people you are dealing with. Because in times of election, they are the energy of these people you will need to go and vote who next will be their leader. Like somebody says that in Chad, people gave him their support, that they wanted him to be the next president. I say I will agree with him. That's true. In Cameroon, we also saw that that was true. What do you expect from people who have lost self-esteem and who live in abject poverty? Why would they not support you in a time of election when you need their support and you know what they need? You will give them their support. So I'll give you a very good example. Tell me how a man of 70 to 87 years old would take plane with no fear of plane crash, goes over to France and meets a 35-year-old boy to tell him that the plan he had for his country did not work. It is just to tell you that the world is being controlled by a system. If an old man like that submits himself to a 35-year-old boy, he acknowledges that that system is stronger than him. We need systems, Mr. Leo, and it will take strong individuals to build system. We are talking about legacy. What is the son of the Idriss Deby want to succeed in Chad? Is it the military? Succession should be legacy. What you have been built that outlives you and favors your people. That is what it should succeed. What is it going to succeed?
Hi, good evening, Mr. Liu. I'm Godwin talking from Banga. It's a good program to follow. The death of Idriss Deby is a manipulation, even though it's a claim. Okay, good evening, people. I just want to find out if he was the only one killed or other soldiers that along with him. Hans, teacher from Douala, special greetings to Mr. Ibakwa. I see France really has a mechanism in Africa. Why should they support military transition in Chad and reject the one in Myanmar? Okay. Greetings to you people on the panel. Happened, Mr. Liu. What would it French colony kicks France out of Africa? May I have Apostle Ambe's number? Just write to me after the program if you need his number. Okay. Congratulations to the panel. Good evening to you. Good evening. I'm Kong Emmanuel from Bokwango Boya. My take on this issue is that President Idriss' death is a message France is sending to Cameroon and any other head of state who wants to cut its dependency from France to rethink. Killing Deby will facilitate a penetration of many rebel groups into the Cameroon territory or the Semak sub-region. Good evening to you. This one says, good evening, Mr. Liu and the panelists. I strongly believe that the demise came from within because he could not die as announced. Again, the Chadian army is not clear because soldiers work in the army for some time, abandon it and go to the rebels camp, work there and come back. Okay, good evening, Mr. Liu. It's Blandine from Yaoundé. I think Mr. Idriss died as a hero and also a patriotic citizen. It's an example for all other African presidents to follow. Okay, Mabel, writing from there in Kumbu, says, greetings to my parents in the studio. I'm praying God touch the hearts of all these leaders in our country. Good evening to you, Mabel, and the people of Kumbu. Out there with division, Mr. Liu, African youths needs to stand up. The presidents in Africa should know God is watching them and they will pay for derailing their citizens. Wisdom is writing from Boya. Good evening to you, Wisdom. This one says, the French ambassador to Chad already met with the new Chadian president today. African, let's rise against our Western war tilted mentality and French influence in our soil. France out of Africa in the name of Jesus. Out. Prophet Ambe, kudos. Ta is writing from Kumbo. We hope God answers your prayers. My regards to the panel. Love your program. Bison writing from Atiku. Now, many persons are already endorsing the strong man. Is it because they are afraid that the civilian may not be able to stand up to the threat posed by the rebels, or they are very sure that the son will be able to stand the rebels?
It will be shocking to let you know that the rebels are fighting for civilians to take over.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'm telling you. The rebels are even fighting for a civilian to take over. Yeah. That's what they are fighting.
Their issue is to take
Deby, the military stuff, control out of power. Deby is a kind of, how do I put it? Deby is a mask president. They pretend he takes power through democracy, but he rules through a military method. That is to say, the world knows that he comes to power through democracy, but in the actual sense, Deby is a military commander. So Chad is actually controlled by a military system of government. And all Deby's children, most of them occupy military responsibilities. In other words, he's telling them that if you're not a military man, you cannot handle this country. That's the situation on ground. So if we are talking that the rebels want free and fair election. They want pure democracy. They want power to be rotational. They don't want monarchs on thrones in the name of Democrats. They are tired of having one president for 30 years. They are frustrated. That's the reason why they are even against the fact that a military should take over. If you see the bishops of Chad writing, endorsing the constitution, it's because they are also tired of the military rule in Chad. And in the advanced Africa of today, it is very, very absurd to still have military rule in some countries.
Yeah, but should the African Union not have raised that as a first point?
Mr. Liu, I know you are a journalist and you are a moderator. You have to ask you questions. But there are questions that sometimes it's difficult for us to answer. This African Union is not a toothless bulldog. It's not even a dog. It's a millipede. You see? No, we have to be sincere now.
Yeah, because you are seated here in Douala, raising the need for civilians to take over. A military son, 37 years old, takes over and is almost
against the constitution.
And the African leaders sit and are watching.
That's what I'm telling you. That is it not shocking also that the president or the chairman of the African Union right now is from Chad?
Musa is from Chad.
Musa Faki is from Chad. Musa Faki has not even tweeted as chairman of AU. He has tweeted as Musa Faki.
So in other words, they're waiting for instructions on the official position to take.
How do you explain that Musa Faki is called by France to sack AU ambassador to the US Arikana Chihomboro cow. Is it telling you that Musa Faki is a sheep led by a shepherd? Is it not enough for you to be convinced that if Musa Faki can go to the extent of not touching his own country, it's delicate? You can beat every other person, but you touch a man's wife, the last energy in him will come out.
How do we explain this? But we saw African presidents giving lessons to the white who touched George Floyd out there in the United States. But seemingly everybody is quiet at what is happening in Chad.
When Europe sniffs, Africa catches cool.
What happened in France, Hebdo? You had President went and cried now. Who marched in the street on France?
Yes. What happened in France? The whole internet, social media was, I stand with France, yes, I stand with France, I stand with France. Cameroon is here 4 years.
Okay, nobody.
People are dying, nobody is standing with Cameroon. Is to tell you that we have been configured to think there is a community somewhere who believes that Prince Philip is a god. Yeah, they worship him. They have never seen him. They worship that he is an incarnation of a god that exists. That is why I go back to ask the question that the Chinese, could they be right? Could they be right that we Africans are a species of chimpanzee called the orangutan? I need, because sometimes we should not just take information as abuse. You have to reason it first to know if it's an abuse or it's a wake-up call or it's I don't understand. That you are the chairman of AU. Do you know that there's an AU force?
Yes, of course.
There's an AU force. There's also a G Sahel police. You mean that this AU force is in Africa? There's G Sahel police in Africa. The only thing I don't know is Semak police. Then they are confronting one of their own until they are killing him before their very eyes. Somebody who has fought relentlessly and tirelessly to make sure that there is security within that particular region. Even if for nothing, at least protect him, because he has played a pivotal role to secure that region. Who doesn't know about Deby's feat in Africa? He has a record. He has a record that he has left behind when it comes to securing people. Even if he did nothing for Chad, keeping the people alive was a very strong role he played in the land of Chad. And if I am to conclude, because we are almost getting to the end of the program, if I am to conclude, the thing I would tell Africans today is this: it is difficult to find heads who are taking people ahead. In leadership, in every sphere, you will never find many pilots, but you always find many passengers. You will not see many drivers. You will see one driver carrying many persons in a bus. The same goes to a ship. In this life, those who take men ahead, they are not many. But the truth is, once that plane is landing, every other person that respected and submitted to the skill and intelligence of that single pilot lands at the same time. The problem is not who is leading. The problem is, are we going to arrive at our destination? Let us start finding men that can fly this jet of leadership to take us to our expected destination. It doesn't matter who is sitting in the cockpit. The problem is a person able enough to land the jet? If it takes 10 years, 5 years, the most important thing is that you can land. That's why I've said we are tired of having head of state. We should start having a head of state. Leadership is not occupying headship. Leadership is the capacity to take people ahead.
We are coming to the end of today's edition of the program. I'll take a few messages. Tiku Felix, writing from Boya, says, good evening, Mr. Liu. If France goes out of Africa, then it's the first step of hope. If the cat is killed, then 50% hope. The dissolving of the present AU with the recreation of an AU with 100% Pan-Africanists as governors, an AU where no head of state is a member, then Africa can think of freedom. Tiku Felix and Deep, writing there from Boya. Good evening, Mr. Liu. You and your team as well as guests are doing a great job. Kudos. Africa's curse is the pseudo intellectuals who ruin the continent with Western evil influence. Azanui Benny, writing from Douala. We want to say thank you to you, Dr. Ndimancho, for answering present to our call this evening.
Yeah, thanks so much, Leo. And I think, as a last word, I think we should do politics differently in Africa. And the issue of clans is one of the things that is spoiling over us. And we realize that we are condemning Idriss Deby, that when he came up, he put most of his family members beside him. But of course, it's understanding that he wanted a team that is trustworthy, people that he can take and they go and see the same vision. But unfortunately, it didn't turn out as it is. But we think that the issue of clans, yes, the issue of clanization should be discouraged in Africa. We should look for people who have a long vision. I mean, a vision that stands in 100 years than people who have just immediate vision. And I think that with that power and actually sustainability is going to be in governance. And
also to you, Andrew Nateme Bako, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leonard. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Okay, and lastly to you, Apostle Ambe Valentine Gwa, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Leo. Thank you for the birthday wishes, and God bless you all in Jesus' name.
Amen. We want to thank you, Desmond and Eli and Noel and Bertrand. Not forgetting you, Tambe Bryant. We say thank you for all of you who have taken time off to watch the program this evening. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.